Hey everybody, video here for you today. Ancient history news. First, let's go down to Italy today. Tiny little town called Fileri Novi, right down here. Here's a little city from overhead, but let's concentrate on this area right down here. I got this flipped upside down. This is actually just a little north of the city here. Right down here, ancient ruins were found. There is a church in this area today, but this whole area has ruins in it. Some ground penetrating radar. I'll show you that. Let's take a look. Here's a look from ground level, an old church here. I'm not sure how far back in history this goes, but through some ground penetrating radar, different than LiDAR, but it showed a whole bunch of ruins out in this area. We can't see anything from ground level, but let's take a look at those pics. Here we are from overhead. Let's just zoom in a little. But this place looks like it is enclosed by a wall. But when we go to the ground penetrating radar pics here, you can see there's different size structures just under the ground here. Very evident on these pics from overhead. Here's a look at the whole enclosure here, or most of it, just a little bit cut off here at the bottom. There was a lot of buildings in here. Let's just read a little. I will leave all these links below. Here it says Revolutionary Archaeology, entire Roman city revealed without any date. Here's that pic again. Ruins surrounding this whole area here. It says the city rises. Archaeologists have revealed an entire Roman city without any digging. For the first time, a team of archaeologists from the University of Cambridge and Ghent have succeeded in mapping a complete Roman city, Fileri Novi in Italy, using advanced ground-penetrating radar. The technology has allowed them to reveal astonishing details while the city remains deep underground. It says archaeologists have discovered a bath complex, market temple, public monument, unlike anything seen before, and even the city's sprawling network of pipes. By looking at different depths, they can study how the town evolved over hundreds of years. The research published on June 8, 2020 in Antiquity harnessed recent advances in GPR technology, which make it possible to explore larger areas in higher resolution than ever before. Here it says ground-penetrating radar time slice in the case study area at an estimated depth of about 3/4 of a meter. The number 1 marks an area where walls were removed by stone robbers. Here's a vehicle that they towed the ground-penetrating radar device on. And here is a temple they found. This appears very much intact, right under ground level here. Here some of the structures are identified: shops, baths, markets, temple, theater. Down here at the bottom, semicircle form. Pretty cool story. Let's move on. Next story, not too far away, down in Croatia here. The Adriatic Sea, there's a tiny town here on the coast of Croatia, Karlobag, right down here. But in these little hills, there's a couple necropolises, and if you look around, there's a few candidates. It's really hard to get an exact location on this. When you zoom in here, it all kind of looks the same. One area might be up in these hills up here on top. Seems there are some tombs up there. Another area might be right down above the city, right down here. The necropolis are described as having honeycomb tombs. This could be an area right down here above the city here. This is just where the story begins. It says Indiana Bones, the archaeologist's dogs discovering ancient remains. The author meets cadaver canines who are trained to detect human bodies, some of which are thousands of years old. Here's the dogs sniffing around in the necropolis above the city here. It says on a sunny summer day in Croatia several years ago, an archaeologist and 2 dog handlers watched as 2 dogs, one after the other, slowly worked their way across the rocky top of a wind-scoured ridge overlooking the Adriatic Sea. Bodies had lain in beehive-shaped tombs on this necropolis, part of the prehistoric hill fort of Durrington since the Iron Age. The 2 dogs, trained to detect human remains, were searching for scents that were thousands of years old. I will leave this link below if you are dog lovers or you just want to read this. But here are some of the handlers here with the dogs. Here are some bronze buttons found at one of the archaeological sites they were working at. Here, searching for a cadaver in Germany. One of the sites they worked at was the Winterville Mound site. I talked about that in my Ancient America series. But here it doesn't really say what burial ground they are working at here, but they are in a trench at some sort of burial mound here. Here is another look overlooking the Adriatic in Croatia. Here's my Winterville Pyramid Mounds in Mississippi video, and I think this is where they were doing the excavation right out here. This could be what that is a pic of. But these dogs have done work all over the world. I just thought this was an interesting article. Let's move on. Next story, let's go down to Stonehenge in England. And I know while I'm working on this video, I saw Matt at Ancient Architects did a video on this. Not sure what he said, but I'm sure he goes into this in a lot more detail than I will in this minute and a half or 2 minutes here. But here is Stonehenge, and the thing that always impressed me were all the ruins around Stonehenge. Just backing out of the Stonehenge site, you can get a good look at that causeway there. There are things to the south, right under the ground here. There are some mound circles down here. Hinges, whatever you want to call them. Here. There is a barrow right here, stone mound. If we back out here and come up this way, there's a row of mounds right here, just north of the Stonehenge feature. Now, more than a few people sent me the story. Vast Neolithic circle of deep shafts found near Stonehenge. Here's one of the sites near Stonehenge. It says, vast 4,500-year-old pit structure discovered circling Stonehenge neighbor at Durrington Walls. Here's a look at what they think these shafts had in them. These large stones here. And Durrington Walls is located by Woodhenge, a very large enclosure. Wasn't discovered until fairly recent times. Here's a massive Durrington Wall site right here. Kind of comes around this way. This way. This is large henge. One of the bigger ones we have. That'll give you an idea how far around it goes, and it still comes a little farther this way. Notice right there. But that whole field there, inside of a massive henge, the Durrington Walls. It says the size of the shafts and circuit surrounding Durrington Walls is currently unique. It demonstrates the significance of Durrington Walls henge, the complexity of the monumental structures within Stonehenge landscape, and the capacity and desire of Neolithic communities to record their cosmological belief systems in a way and at a scale that we had never previously anticipated. There's a look at Stonehenge there, some of the big stones. Now, this new discovery, they are calling it, here is the Durrington Walls right here in the middle. Here is Stonehenge in the top left. Here is a map. Here's the Durrington Walls, Stonehenge up here with that causeway coming off. Here are where they found these stones in the ground. That's pretty interesting. All the way, it looks like, encircling the large Durrington Walls. What was the purpose? Are they indeed associated with the Durrington Walls? That seems to be the best answer. Here's a story from September of 2015. Stonehenge archaeologists find huge Neolithic site. Talks about the buried remains of a giant prehistoric monument discovered close to Stonehenge. Talks about the Durrington Walls, the buried stones. Well, the more we look around this famous place, the more we learn. Those are some pretty interesting stories and finds coming from the Stonehenge area. Great place to look around. This whole area is full of ancient ruins. Let's move on. Next story, let's go down to France. Cave site down here. I believe this is called Dordogne, France. It's right in this area, right down here. This is physics.org. It says French cave reveals secrets of life and death from the ancient past. Here's a look inside of the cave. Looks like some remains there. It says the Grotte de Cusack Cave in Dordogne, France is a site of stunning cave art containing more than 800 figurative engravings of animals and humans that are between 25,000 and 30,000 years old. Here's a look at some points in the cave, some human remains, drawings of horses there. They have been working on the research in here for about 10 years. You can only go in here for about 2 months out of the year due to high carbon dioxide levels, certain points of the year, but this goes back many thousands of years. It says it is all about protecting the cave, said Dr. Scotsman's. Our suits and gumboots cannot contain a speck of sediment from outside the cave. Any microorganism or fungus we bring in might have a negative influence on the conservation of the cave Everything in the cave is fully protected, including the surface of the cave, which is the only original paleo surface. We can't touch anything. We can only walk on a single narrow path and have to conduct all research from that path. It's surprising how much information you can get from observations only. Interesting, though, the human remains. It says the human remains were found in 3 locations within the cave and have been deliberately placed in former bear hibernation nests. In 2 of these sites, the bear nests, which are hollow areas formed on the cave floor, show signs of being covered with red ochre before the remains were placed in there. And that seems to be a worldwide cross-culture thing, using red ochre with burial remains. That is certainly an interesting story. Remains and art coming from 30,000 years ago from a cave in France. Next story. Last story, since we started with a Roman story, why don't we end with a Roman story? We are going down to Alaska, Mount Okmok, right here. Here is Mount Okmok, large volcanic mountain. Did he say a Roman story? Why is he taking us into Alaska? Is he confused? Well, no, not really. Let's just read. As I back out here, you get an idea. This is a huge volcanic island. This blew over 2,000 years ago. Let's just read. This story just came out a few hours ago. It says eruption of Alaska's Okmok volcano linked to period of extreme cold in ancient Rome. Things happening on one side of the globe can affect weather on the other side of the globe. There's a look at that massive island volcano right there. It says an international team of scientists and historians have found evidence connecting an unexplained period of extreme cold in ancient Rome with an unlikely source, a massive eruption of Alaska's Okmok volcano located on the opposite side of the Earth. Here's an animated timeline showing European summer temperatures and volcanic sulfur and ash levels in relation to this time period. See right in the middle, we have an unexplained ash and sulfur content. Came from Alaska. 43 BC seems to be the eruption date. I just thought this was a pretty interesting article. A lot of periods of human history. We have great fluctuations in temperature that are unexplained. It says, according to their findings, the 2 years following the Okmok 2 eruption were some of the coldest in the northern hemisphere in the past 2,500 years. And the decade that followed was the 4th coldest, but they used some Greenland ice cores in their work here. I will leave the link below. Pretty fascinating. I have done maybe half a dozen videos on volcanic eruptions, but the Okmok eruption, and this is actually called a caldera, that is a new one on me. Apparently it had worldwide effects. That's a pretty interesting story. And those are 5 ancient history news stories coming from around the world. Hope everybody out there is doing good. Hope you dads had a good Father's Day yesterday. And I hope you thought that was cool. And you all have a very safe day.